Hello everyone, and welcome to another stream of the AOR PC GT3 Elite League on Project Cars. I'm Fizzy, and we are back from a week's break from the league, 2 weeks since the last race, and we now start the second half of Season 7. And we are, for this round 6, at the Zhuhai International Circuit in China for 45 laps of racing, and you will see as we skip to the racetrack that it's quite rainy out on track. So that should be some excitement hopefully thrown up for us today. There have been quite a few major developments that have gone on through the break regarding the championship and the results from the previous race at Catalonia, but we'll touch on that after the end of qualifying, which, as you can see, only has 2.5 minutes to go. So first, let me introduce my co-commentator as always, which is of course Mr. Yoki065.
Hello, it's good to be back once again after the week break that we had, and gonna be an interesting circuit, but as Fizzy's alluded to, there have been a couple of developments over the last couple of weeks, so we should probably get on to that. Actually, well, we've only got 2 minutes of qualifying session.
Yeah.
Of the qualifying left, so we should probably do that first. Then we should probably talk about what happened during the week.
Exactly, that's what I was thinking. So first, let's focus on the action right out on track today for the last 2 minutes of this particular session, qualifying for round 6. And as you can see, Charf is at the top of the timesheets. Without a Nova in sight, which you will know why in a second. So, second place at the moment in the session is Sula. It's 0.4 of a second down. Then we got F-Mate currently sitting in third. Suomi is back on the grid. That is great to see. Suomi in the Chevrolet Corvette back in the grid. He's changed his livery. He used to run a yellow livery, but now he's in a... I haven't seen that livery before. Quite purpley. I kind of like that one. A bit of orange splashed onto it as well. So Suomi fourth in the session so far. D. Keller, maybe more famously known as Papand, currently holding the 5th place spot ahead of Godfather Shift, who is third in the championship, and then Hideaki Gronstra back in the grid as well after returning to lead last week. Up in 8th at the moment, and you can see we have 17 drivers on the grid today. That's not too bad, Yorkie.
Yep, 17.
That's pretty decent.
Yeah, half decent. Just having a look to see who's still out on track. Suomi is at the moment, so is D. Keller. Those are the only... Oh, no, sorry, Jeff. Those are the only 3 drivers who are out on track in these final 30 seconds. Actually make that. D. Keller's now actually gone across the line, and I believe has returned to the garage. Jeff has now returned to the garage as well, so Suomi is the only person out on track in these last 20 seconds or so of this session.
Yep, and he is coming across the final corner, I believe, and he will have the time to complete this lap. He's currently P4, and he remains P4. There was an improvement to his time there, but it didn't get enough. Oh, he was half a tenth away from getting up to third. F-Mate is only 5,100s, oh sorry, 5,600s even. Or 56,000 actually ahead of him. So here we have the qualifying order. Chav will be on pole position ahead of Sula, and an F-Mate ahead of Suomi on the second rows. Keller, Godfather Shift, Hideaki, Gronster, Jeff, and Brandress in the top 10. Then we have Claessens, Ratrug, Biltis, Hatharion, Mr. Alcon, Jamai, and myself for some reason. But we actually have Rillo down there, who will be starting on the grid behind us, according to that list.
Yep, I don't think he set a qualifying time in that session, so he will be behind us. But of course, with the formation lap that we do at the start of these races, he will not have to worry about me and you being in the way, because we'll be retiring to the pit straight away at the very beginning of the session.
Yeah. Which is good for him. So, hello to the guys in the Twitch chat, Minimanor, Nismo, and Sula, who is also on the on the grid today, saying good luck to everyone. That is nice. So, a few things to touch on, as I mentioned earlier, after the race that happened 2 weeks ago in Catalonia. Actually, first, before I start getting into that, do let us know in the chat, please, Minimanor or anyone else, if the voice of my voice relative to Yorki's voice is fine. So if you're Yorki, if you can just say a few words so we can kind of compare that.
I am going to say a few words.
Thank you.
That will be all.
Those were some lovely words right there. So yeah, do let us know that, because I always forget the settings for the audio level. So, but yeah, so Catalonia. A few things happened over the break, basically related to track limits. So, after the Catalonia race, several drivers ended up getting reported to the stewards for abusing track limits during that race, and I think it was 4 drivers who was reported, and unfortunately, unfortunately, it was quite severe in most cases for those that were reported, and 3 drivers got disqualified from the race result of Catalonia, including the man who won that race, Nova. Which is why I'm now going to show you the current driver championship, with Nova way down in second place, 34 points off Charv because of that disqualification. And basically that led then to Nova, I don't know how we can really put this, apart from calling it a bit of a rage quit from the league, to be honest. So, yeah, he clearly didn't like getting disqualified. He then tried to report Charv to the stewards for track limits as well, but that was way after the reporting deadline, which is 2 days after the race has taken place. Basically because, you know, we have to set a time limit on that, because there needs to be a reasonable time for us to get the inquiries sorted and done before the next race and stuff like that. Yeah, so he didn't like that situation. He is no longer racing in the league, which means that unfortunately the championship battle is kind of crippled because of that. But the other drivers that also were affected by disqualifications were Sula, who is down in 12th in the championship right now, and also, who was the last one? Do you remember, Yorkie?
I don't remember.
Oh, it was Ratrug actually. Ratrug as well, in his second race in the league in that Audi.
Yes.
Also, Andrex got a 10-second penalty as well.
And someone else got a penalty as well. I believe 2 drivers got some kind of time penalty in one form or another. It could have been from another split, though.
Yeah, there were a few inquiries from other leagues as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, 9 GT3 leagues on AOR, 3 on each platform. But yeah, obviously it's always a shame, you know, to have championships and race results and stuff affected by penalties post-race. But ultimately, it is the driver's own fault, because, you know, if they don't break the rules in the first place, if they actually respect the rules, you know, of the track limits and anything else that they signed up to when they agreed to, you know, the rules at the start of the season, there wouldn't have been a reason to report them in the first place. So that kind of is what you have to go by. If you don't break the rules, then you have nothing to worry about. So we're gonna see how that affects the team championship as well. Jackbusters up to the top of that one. The Padfathers now up to second. Dig Bigs in third now with only Zulu left in the league. Quite a bit gap from them down to Tototanics and Anzo Racing, who are only 5 points apart there in the battle for fourth. So Yorkie, unless you have anything to add, I think I hadn't exactly planned how to explain all of that, but I managed to fit it just about within the warm-up time here, so hopefully that was okay and relatively understandable.
Yeah, it was just a little bit of an unfortunate situation, really. Obviously, Nova obviously got reported by Chaff, but wasn't. He didn't put his inquiry into until a week after the race and when his penalty had been dished out. So in a way, it kind of did appears to be a bit of a almost like a revenge inquiry, but at the same time, it's we're in a very difficult situation where we couldn't really review the evidence that was provided, and I think that was I believe that was Nova's main issue, was the fact that we weren't able to look at the inquiry that he was putting forward, so he felt he was hard done by and therefore left the league basically on that basis, which is a shame because obviously it's now changed the championship quite drastically, but hopefully we can still get some good racing. The guys of Godfather Shift and Hideaki have also shown some strong pace and been in and around Chaff, so hopefully Chaff won't be all alone out front and we'll have people trying to battle him. Obviously Sula getting a pretty decent lap, getting second place this time round. He will be in a pretty good position along with F-Mate to challenge in the first couple of laps. And hopefully with this track that we haven't raced too many times at in the past at AOR, hopefully we should have a pretty good race on our hands. We're also starting off in these light rain conditions that we currently have at the moment, but later on the conditions should dry out a little bit, so we'll probably end up seeing the track conditions dry out and the drivers making a pit stop at some point along the line.
Indeed, yeah. Weather forecast is scheduled to dry the track up. It's kind of light, it's not too dark on the circuit either, so visibility should be reasonable, apart from the spray kicking up from the cars ahead, obviously, for these guys. Luckily these cars of course have windscreen wipers that will help with that. So let me quickly check. Actually, we have still got 17 cars under the grid, so no one's had any issues so far. That lovely purple Corvette now lining up as they start getting into 2x2 formation towards the end of the lap here. And we will have hopefully an exciting race. Obviously, like you mentioned, shame about the championship situation, but 5 races to go in the season. All we can really do is take it as it comes, focus on the track action that we will be getting here, and hopefully it should provide some good racing. And I think we are now on the straight before the final corner. Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
Final corner there. Someone asked in the chat what the pole lap time was. I can't quite remember actually. So we'll have to. Yeah, it was pretty fast. Chaff was definitely fast to take pole position, 4/10 of a second ahead of Sula. And there we go, he's actually put his foot down already, and Sula's been caught off guard a little bit as a result. Suomi has had an absolutely blistering start. I wonder if he got ahead of him before the start line there, because he shouldn't do that, but I think... And it's 3 wide into the first corner. Sula actually got that place back from Suomi regardless of whether Suomi passed him too early, but Suomi is up to third position ahead of F-Mate, who was dropped down a spot on the side-by-side behind with Godfather Shift, just ahead of D. Keller. So that is one position drop for Keller, as well as now it looks like Suomi is getting a great run. Oh, and for the next time, and Sula has had a slowdown penalty. Everyone will have to avoid him now. Unfortunately, Sula has taken too much of the off-track area and been forced by the game to slow right down, and he's dropped several positions there, York. Yes, they're still battling going on in the midfield.
Yep, there's been a couple of pinch points where a couple of cars were fairly slow coming through the apex of corners, which has just held a whole bunch of people up further back in the field. If roughly in and around Jeff, who's currently in 9th place at the moment. Oh, we've got a car diving down the inside of him. That'll be Brandrous taking a little bit. Oh, there's a little bit of contact in the background there as well between Biltis and also Ratrug. Ratrug was also a little bit slow in the apex of the very first turn. That held a couple of cars up as there was a couple of cars going 2, 3, 4 cars wide through that first corner, but hopefully things will start to settle down a little bit. Obviously, as we saw, Sula got caught with the cut extending penalty as he came out the exit of turn 4 and into turn 5, which is the very slight right-handed kink. If you get too far out onto the grasscrete out there, you will get slowed with a slowdown penalty for that. F-Mate is just following Suomi in 3rd and 2nd position at the moment, and I was keeping an eye on Suomi, and he did not pass Sula before the start-finish line. He was pretty much alongside, but his nose was just behind Sula's, so he should be all good in terms of avoiding a penalty there.
Yeah, that is good news. Obviously, because like we already touched on, we don't like to see post-race penalties being awarded, and I think actually part of Sula's disqualification from Catalonia, not only the track limits, but actually that he also jumped aside a little bit on that one. But yeah, it must have been very close, but good news that Suomi was in the clear on that one. And the battle behind, though, for 4th position looked pretty close through there. Hideaki pressuring D. Keller for 5th place at the moment. Oh! And Suomi having to defend from F-Mate into turn 9, I believe, and now through the pretty high-speed corner of turn 10. Suomi being forced defensive in that Corvette, while the leader of the race, Charf, is allowed to pull quite a gap now out in front. So kind of unsurprising, really, considering the season so far. And F-Mate not close enough to Suomi on this occasion, although he gets a reasonable exit out of the corner, kind of moves out of the spray to give himself a bit of better visibility into the final corner of the lap now, but Suomi is going to stay ahead at the end of the 2nd racing lap of this race.
Yep, F-Mate had a pretty good exit, obviously with the rear car full of the engine in that roof. He's actually got really good slipstream as well. He's going to have very good traction coming out of the hairpin of turn 11. He wasn't quite able to get up alongside Suomi this time coming into the first turn, but also I did see Sula earlier, did manage to get past Hideaki, but they've both gone.
Sula's completely gone. Sula is in the pit lane, so he has stopped at his pit man at the moment.
Yep, well, I think there may have been contact somewhere along the line in the final turn. He did get around the outside of Hideaki coming into turn 9. He managed to make that move stick through turn 10. But he has not moved out of his pit box. The pit guy has just moved out of the way to signal him to let him go. Oh, there he goes. He's going now. So, yeah, I think there may have been damage somewhere along the line. I can't see him changing tyres now because it's still raining. So he's going to lose a whole bunch of positions because of that. He's down in 17th place. Obviously, 1 point out of, or 1 position out of the points positions, but yeah, he's a long way behind the rest of the field as they're all going through turns 9 and 10 at the moment. At least the back markers are. Hideaki's made contact with Biltis there, I believe it was. I think Biltis may have got slightly sideways coming out the exit of turn 10, and just unfortunately did a half spin.
Oh, Ratrug just got straight on.
To a wall. Oh yeah, just picking that up now as he's actually got Hitharion on his right-hand side, as they head down that short straight down towards the final turn. But I don't think Hitharion quite has the legs to get up alongside and try and make the move into that final corner.
Yeah, wow, so lots of action in the midfield. The McLaren running slightly onto the grass there on the exit of the corner, but he managed to carry decent speed as well. And Hideaki also not having a good start of this race in the pits already. The man who is in decent position in the championship. Hideaki is, after actually, despite his issues last week when he didn't score any points for the first time this season, he is in 5th place in the championship. That's a shame for Hideaki. Let's move back up to the battle for 2nd place and see that Suomi has actually pulled out a couple of seconds, or at least a second and a half or so, on F-Mate now, after being pressured by him earlier. So F-Mate actually now has to worry more about Godfather of Shift in the BMW Z4 running right behind him, and also D. Keller in a touching distance as well. So at the moment it looks like Chaff has got control out in front. Suomi is starting to pull away. And then we got the trio of F-Mate, Godfather Shift, D. Keller, and then another little gap down to Claessens, who has a few seconds either side of him. Gronstra as well, with a quite silent start to this race. No issues for him so far, running 7th. I think that's 1 position up from where he started the race. And Jeff then leads a few cars, Brandreth, Mr. Alcon, into the top 10, which is good. Mr. Alcon has missed a couple of races with some technical issues as well. So he's back on the grid in also a new livery. I feel like quite a few drivers have opted to change their livery for whatever reason for this race. Don't know if there's any particular reason for that, apart from them wanting a bit of variety. But then the battle for 11th with Ratrog now ahead of the Bentley of Hetharion.
Yep, they seem to be relatively close together at the moment. I was going to point out that he was at F-Mate was a couple of seconds slower than Suomi on the previous lap, so I think there may have been a mistake from F-Mate, which obviously dropped him back towards Godfather Shift in 4th position, which is why we saw the big gap between those drivers. But yeah, the 3 guys relatively close together in the battle for P11, and actually the guys in front are also relatively close together as well. Mr. Alcon closing up on the back of Perry Gronstra.
I commented a cursed Gronstra, by the way. I said it had a silent race with no mistakes, and now he's dropped 2 positions since I said that. So yeah.
You did that in the last race as well. You commentated curse someone else. I
hope it wasn't Gronstra. I remember Gronstra crashed last time out in Catalonia. He didn't have the best comeback then, but I don't think I cursed him on that occasion. I think he did that to himself. But yeah, Mr. Gronstra, I do apologise. Whatever you did wrong, I do take responsibility for. So yeah, that is Brandreth and Jeff who have taken advantage of that.
Yeah, that's quite good news for them. Bad news for Hideaki though. Just seen him pop up in the chat saying that his race is over. He got spun into twice, and then his pit crew put him onto dry tyres. I think the incident that we saw was one of them was Biltis. I imagine the other one was probably Sula, who's now in 16th position. Obviously with Hideaki's retirement, he's now actually managed to get himself up into the points.
Oh, and Jamai, that was very lucky, because I normally wouldn't have really been watching Jamai, who was running quite silently at the back of the pack, but he had a lovely little 360 roundabout on the grass there. So that's going to lose him a bit more time in the Mercedes SLS. He's, yeah, he's still going. And lost touching distance to Rilla though in 14th now, who is trying to keep up with the other McLaren of Biltis ahead of him.
Yeah, so quite a long way back from the rest of the guys. But yeah, Hideaki unfortunately retiring from this race, so that's not good in that sense. So we're down to 16 drivers, so all of the drivers who are currently competing at the moment will be scoring at least a point in this race. Obviously Chaff, our race leader, just coming through the final turn. He'll be starting lap 8, starting reasonable pace at the moment in the very low 134s. He just did a high 133 on that lap, so he's continuing to extend his gap to Suomi in 2nd place at the moment. Just come across the line as well in that purple Corvette, as you've pointed out, doing quite nice and tidy as it goes through the first turn. And Godfather Shift seems to be sitting relatively close to the back of F-Mate, only probably about a second between the two, 1.5 seconds. So this could be a relatively good battle to keep an eye on at the, particularly at the front of the field anyway.
Yep, gonna have to do that. I'm just watching Jeff at the moment, who actually some point in the previous lap got passed by Brandreth. So I think I just about caught the end of that one. The Aston Martin moving ahead of the Mercedes SLS there. Speaking of cars, actually, obviously, in terms of the track, it's got quite a lot of long straights and heavy braking zones, but obviously with the weather as well, which cars would you say have kind of an edge around this track in these conditions?
I'd say definitely the roof will have quite a big advantage. We know it's a pretty good jack-of-all-trades car, and obviously with the weight of the engine being over the rear wheels, it provides pretty good traction in the... there's a little bit of contact there between Jeff and Gronstra. Gronstra giving Jeff a little bit of a nudge coming into turn 9. But yeah, that roof obviously be good around here with the traction zones, especially in the wet weather. And then yeah, it's got decent straight line speed, decent brakes as well. So the very stop-start nature of this circuit, which is quite punishing on brakes as well, it obviously suit that car relatively well. The Aston Martin and the SLS would do fairly good, I'd say, around this circuit. Although the SLS would probably be struggling on brakes. We know it's not very good at slowing down, and some of these long braking zones can hurt the car a little bit more and not really play to its strengths.
All right. And of course, for any viewers just joining us, we are expecting the weather to clear up. Well, the weather isn't going to clear up, but the rain is going to clear up. There's always going to be some kind of weather, but yeah, the track should dry up at some point during this race, so the drivers will have to... oh my word, as Gronstra has completely missed his braking point into turn 4 and smashed the back of Jeff. Not too hard of a smash, I don't think, but it definitely pushed Jeff across the corner a little bit. Luckily, Jeff at least avoided the slowdown penalty as a result of going across that corner, and not by the fault of himself, but Grunster still going, might potentially be a little bit of damage to the front of his car though.
Yep, I doubt Jeff would be too pleased with the constant knock on the rear of his, and Ratrock is actually getting relatively close in P10 to the back of Gronstra now. Obviously, with a couple of mistakes that Gronstra's had, it's brought him right into play, and he may very soon be in a position to try and see if he can work his way a little bit closer, try and pick up that slipstream and see if he can nick that 9th place off Gronstra in front of him.
So some interesting comments in the chat actually.
I just seen that as well.
So first of all, Hideaki with his stat that he's completed 2 laps in the last 2 races, so that's not gone too well. Quite a shame for Hideaki. He deserves a lot better than that, obviously. I said he was 5th place in the championship, but that is probably not going to last, with Keller only 8 points behind, and he is currently running up in 5th position. Claessen's, though, is... yeah, so Claessen's in 6th, but he should also get enough points, I think, to get ahead of Hideaki here. And same with Suomi, actually, who's running up in 2nd, so yeah, quite a shame for him. But another thing that Hideaki said was that Charf is apparently looking to no-stop this race, because apparently you only lose around 2 seconds a lap from running wet tires on a dry track. That sounds like not very much as Gronstra. Yep.
Gone very, very deep and onto the grass. We've seen him struggle a couple of times in the braking zone, and he's gone deep a number of times. I'm actually wondering if he's tried running a more closed brake duct to try and what do you call it?
Cool.
Sorry, right. No, yeah, he's trying to run a more closed brake disc so he can try and maximize some of the straight line speed of the Z4 and try and negate some of the disadvantages that the Z4 has compared to some of the other cars around this track. However, because the track is so punishing on brakes, it's obviously if you close your brake disc cooling ducts up, it obviously doesn't get enough cooling air into the brakes, so they overheat easily. And if they overheat, you tend to get a lot of brake fade. And because we've got mechanical wear, or mechanical damage on, that will now actually be coming into play and affecting the brakes. So if he's experiencing a lot of brake fade, the braking distances are going to extend an awful lot, and yeah, if he's just constantly overheating the brakes, it's just going to compound and snowball the issue a whole lot worse, and things aren't going to be good, and it's going to make his race very, very difficult for him.
Yeah. That's a funny thing actually, because I did have a race around here myself back in the day, which I was really struggling on the brakes, and I had no clue why. But I think it turned out that I was just way too my tires, my brakes were just overheating massively because my duct was too close, I guess.
Yep. Because where it's constant stop, start with very heavy braking zones, that obviously the heat in the brakes keeps shooting up in those braking zones and then doesn't really cool enough before the next one. And if I remember correctly, was in the same race as you, or at least was doing some testing for the same race as you, and I ended up having to pretty much run at fully open brake ducts in order to keep them cool and in an optimum range. So yeah,
definitely
it's
a
a
tricky balance.
interesting one. Yeah, if someone's gonna try to run it lower and is probably seeing the negative effect of that.
Yeah, indeed. Getting Nismo pointing out that the Bentley Avatarian looking very sexy in the rain. But yeah, I think the Bentley is one of those cars that aren't particularly great in these conditions. Same could probably be said about the the Mercedes SLS, as I'm actually looking at Gronstra again, who half-dived it up the inside of Mr. Alcon into the first corner. So he definitely is eager to get some positions back, despite his brake duct maybe annoying him a bit.
Oh, I did see. I saw Jeff relatively slow going through turns 4 and 5 in the background as we were watching Gronstra, and he now does have Ratwork for very, very close company right up behind him. And it may actually be Perry Gronstra going down the inside of Mr. Alcon. No, he's had a slight look, but he isn't going to be able to make that one stick. But he's very, very close to the back of that roof.
Just not confident enough on the brakes at the moment. Maybe because of the mistake he made earlier. And there's the 2 chances now that he's had to maybe, outbrake Mr. Alcon inside, but just about not been able to do so. So Mr. Alcon doing a good job. He's... Oh my word! Oh my word! Why is Suomi sitting there?
I'm not sure. I just seen that as well. He doesn't seem to be moving. So either there he goes.
Come back to the track. So Suomi's car seems visually undamaged.
I think there's a tiny little bit of damage to the front right.
Right. We'll see if we get a better shot of that. I can't see too much. Car still looks beautiful, but yeah, Suomi has had some kind of major problem from second place, which means that now F-Mate is up to second, and Godfather Shift is on course for another podium, which would be his third consecutive podium after being off it for the first 3 rounds of the season. Hideaki's teammate, obviously, who was
that? Who was that? Who was parked on the outside of turn 1.
Well,
he was in 16th position anyway,
yeah.
But he is now down a lap and parked on the outside of turn 1 in the gravel trap.
At least his windscreen wiper is still working.
His lights are still on.
Yeah, so, unsure what that has been caused by, but obviously, as you mentioned, Sula was quite far down anyway. So yeah, Suomi though, has he been in the pits? He seems to have carried on. The thing with Suomi, I feel, last season as well, Suomi just had some unexplainable issues at various stages of his races. I remember the Nordschleife race last season, where he just suddenly was stopped on the side of the track. That was also after running second place, I think. And suddenly he was just stopped for ages on the side of the track, and eventually retired, so... I can't remember if you ever got an explanation for that.
I know he had some technical issues. He had someone come to the door just as the race was starting, which was really unfortunate. I think it may have been that one. I know a couple of races he was ill at the very start, and one of them was... He
had to board a formation lap at one point because he got ill.
Yeah, he needed to head to the bathroom.
Oh, he's saving a slide there as well. A slide even.
Oh no, there's contact between Perry Gronstra and Mr. Alcon. I was just flicking back down through the field to see what happened, but there was a bump there between the 2 drivers. I think Mr. Alcon may have lost it in front of Gronstra, and Gronstra didn't really have anywhere to go coming out the exit of turn 2 and made contact, but he's gone and did a half spin on the exit of turn 5 and has got a slowdown penalty as well, so he's losing a whole bunch of positions because of that. Will he get going again? Yes, there he goes. Finally gets released, but he's dropped down into 12th position after that contact. So, Perry Gronstra not having a good race. A number of drivers are not having a good race this time round here at Zhuhai.
Yeah, man. We got Hideaki out of the race. Sula essentially out of the race. We saw Jamai had a spin. Suomi, a known error from second place. Gronstra has had now several issues in the race. So yeah, it's... It's going wrong, obviously. Difficult conditions, difficult track in some aspects, and like some drivers getting caught out here. I feel Gronstra is one of those drivers who really has great pace on his day, but he rarely has a fully trouble-free race. And in order to be, in order to be a champion, in order to get great results, you need to have not only good pace but also a trouble-free race, and that is something that he definitely needs to try and work on.
Consistency is the key, as I
Indeed.
found.
Yeah,
Especially
definitely.
when I was driving. Yeah, I was able to get a couple of good results, but also had quite a few bad results as well, and that put me further down the field than I would have liked to have been. Whereas other drivers who are focusing very much on their consistency were able to get very, very good results, pretty much all the time, every race. Hence the hence the definition of consistency. But yeah, Perry Gronstra not having a good race this time round, and just trying to see where the gaps are, where the battles are. There's a lot of these drivers have actually spread out quite a lot now, with a number of drivers making mistakes somewhere along the line, and other drivers just generally being fast. There's quite a bit of disparity between the guys this race.
Yeah. Guess we might as well run through the field in, calm fashion, now that there aren't any super intimately close battles currently going on. We got, of course, the man out in front, Sharf, leading the race from pole position. Got a 1:33.3 as his fastest lap at the moment, which is it is a second quicker than F-Mate, who has got the second fastest lap at the moment, unless Suomi... No, actually, yeah, Suomi has 34.1 down there, 34.3 for F-Mate, but the gap, though, from Sharf down to F-Mate is around 15 seconds, according to my live timing, which as usual is a little bit erratic, so we can't fully trust it, but it should be, approximate at least. Then we got only, though, a couple of seconds from F-Mate down to Godfather Shift, so he's still in touching distance, but his fastest lap is a couple of tenths off F-Mate, so remains to be seen if Godfather Shift has the pace that is required here to catch up to him. He was also a tenth slower on the previous lap, but of course we have got some dry racing coming up later in the race, so maybe F-Mate is better in the wet than Godfather Shift compared to the dry. We don't really know. We're gonna have to wait and see if there's any sort of pace changes in relation to each other with these drivers when the weather clears up. But for now, Godfather Shift looking solid for third place with about 10 seconds down to D. Keller. In fourth, he has got also a relatively solid gap down to Klaassen. So unlike last week at Catalonia, when D. Keller had super action-packed race, dropped out of the field early on, made so many overtakes to get back up into... Actually, he got back up into third place in the end because of the disqualifications ahead of him, even though he crossed the line in fifth. So Keller had a very exciting race in Catalonia, but this time it's quite the opposite so far, running in fourth, and Klaassen's as well. Not had too much action. So what are you seeing?
I am seeing Suomi. Wherever he's gone. I just had the spin on the exit of turn one. I think he ended up going out on slick tires.
Oh, he's gone actually.
Pits. Yeah, I think he has now left the session, unfortunately, with that, because the track is not dry enough yet. In fact, it's still raining, so it's definitely not dry enough for the transition over to slick tires yet. So obviously, in the wet conditions, he's not going to have any grip at all.
Yep. That is true. And how many laps was this race, asks Mr. Youngstar? It started off 45 laps, so I guess this would be lap number 17 then of the race so far.
Yep.
So, we expect that the rain will clear up around the middle, the middle part of the race. So in about 5, 6, 7 laps, maybe we'll start seeing some changes there, and then it will be interesting to see, how the drivers play their pit stops and if they manage to get it right. Obviously, Hideaki mentioned in the chat earlier that that Charf was looking to zero stop and not even bother to change on the dry tires, because the drop off on the wets, even in dry conditions, isn't actually that big apparently, which surprised me a little bit. But I guess we'll see when that time comes, if you know, if Charf actually decides to play a strategy, and if anyone else also decides to try that. Could be interesting, Yorkie, to see. To see it. I don't know. I don't have personal experience with wet tires on a dry track. I don't know about you.
I have tend to find that I overheated relatively quickly, but I think these actually might be intermediates that they're on, considering it's light rain rather than normal rain. Intermediates is generally all that you need in these conditions, so they will fare a little bit better in the drier conditions at the later stage of this race. But even still, I think you may have some slight troubles trying to deal with tyre temperatures, but if we can manage that, he should be okay. I would have thought, considering the amount of time that I'll probably lose in the pit stop. I'm actually seeing oh no! Biltis was letting Perry Gonster go through to take 11th position, and then Biltis unfortunately just missed his braking point completely, with Perry Gonster right in front of him, and slammed into the rear of his car and took both of them off the circuit. They have both now rejoined. Perry Gonster, I imagine, will have a little bit more damage to the rear of his car, and yep, you can see that visually, and Biltis has quite a bit of damage to the front of his McLaren. But yeah, that definitely probably wasn't part of the plan for Biltis there, with that small incident between those two.
Wow, yeah, I only caught the end of that one. I kind of caught them as they both were flying off into the gravel trap. So quite unfortunate. Minor damage on both of those machines as we start lap number 18 probably in this race so far. Still wetness out on track, and Gronstra now back up to 11th place. Atharion into the top 10 actually in that lovely Bentley. 10th is a position he also finished in last week because of 3 disqualifications ahead of him. But he has not actually crossed the line in the top 10 this season. So Atharion having a solid race. Same can be said for Mr. Alcon as well, who in his only race so far this season has finished in P12. So both those looking good for season best results, and quite close together on track as well. Another relatively close battle at the moment is for 7th place, with Havratrug in the Audi, the only Audi on the grid, trying to put some pressure on the Mercedes-Benz SLS of Jeff. Is going very wide actually on the brakes there, but managing to cut it back onto the apex. I nearly thought he was going to run off the track there, considering how much later than Jeff he braked, but he managed to get it slowed down. Did Ratrug in the Audi. And potentially an overtake incoming here, because Ratrug is looking fast. Yep,
I think Jeff may have had a slight mistake somewhere along the line that brought Ratrug a little bit closer. And obviously, Ratrug, sensing that Jeff is probably struggling a little bit, he is looking to try and make that move sometime fairly soon, as Jeff does fall shy of the apex once again, coming through the first turn. A little bit tidier through turn 2, but Ratrug has once again closed up just a little bit more, as they're on the approach now down in towards turn 4. Obviously, Ratrug needs to be careful that he doesn't make contact with the back of Jeff, as he's fairly close to the back of that SLS, and the SLS was probably needing to be braking a little bit earlier, as we know it's pretty poor on its brakes. That time around, Ratrug does brake earlier than Jeff does, and does avoid making contact quite nicely. Noticing that Jeff is taking either a slightly defensive line or a tighter line into the corners. Seems to be pointing his car at the apex a fair bit earlier, rather than the more open sweeping line that Ratrug is taking behind him. So I think it could be down to the different styles of the cars and the driving styles of the two drivers. But Ratrug certainly looking relatively close to the back of Jeff, although he's dropped a couple of car lengths. But again, Jeff looking to be going a little bit deep, going through that hairpin. But the gap doesn't really seem to have changed.
If anything, Jeff has increased slightly by a car length or so through that corner.
Yeah, he would have been on the power a little bit earlier, and obviously with a car pointing at the corner exit and more straight, he would have been able to get the traction down a little bit better than Ratrug and pull away from him slightly.
Yep, update on Suomi. He has now joined us in the Twitch chat, so at least he's saying he is good. So the DNF then today. It hasn't affected his mood too much, hopefully then, even though it's a shame to see him off the track instead of on it, I guess. So he was looking good. He says he was pushing too hard to catch Sharf, and clearly it kind of backfired. It was of course always going to be hard or impossible, as he puts it, to catch Sharf in the Corvette, considering how fast Sharf is in that rough up in the lead. So Suomi was trying everything, and I assume just lost his car while he was pushing, which is why we saw him sitting on the side of the track, and then Yorkie spotted him having a mistake as well later on, which led to the DNF. So hopefully Suomi will be back for the next race, and we'll see him up pushing slightly less hard, but still still hard enough to get a good result next time out, as we continue to look at the battle between Jeff and Ratchwag. But let's just update on the gaps. Chaff completely unchallenged at the moment. F-Mate has actually pulled away a little bit more from Godfather Shift visually as well. You can see it was only a couple of seconds, about 5 laps or so ago when we were looking at them, and Godfather Shift has had a few not too good laps on the previous one. It was a second slower, or 9/10 slower than F-Mate, so it seems like Godfather Shift is starting to struggle maybe a little bit in that Z4. And in my experience as well, the Z4 is not particularly great around this circuit as well, because I think the Z4 likes the high-speed corners more than the long straights and the heavy braking zones. Unfortunately, there are a lot of those two things around Zhuhai.
Yeah, it does like the braking zones. It just it performs a lot better in
maybe it was just me being bad.
Corners. Possibly. Obviously, if you didn't have your brake ducts open enough,
yeah,
and you're constantly overheating, then
I do have that one traumatic experience around here in the Z4, so that's probably why I said that.
Yeah, it's a shame this track isn't raced more often. Not many people know of it. It is a real-world circuit that is over in China, but yeah, not many race series is in the world race on the track, and I haven't seen it feature in any other games apart from this one.
No,
I think there may have been one other game a while ago. I felt it may have been like a MotoGP game. I think. Possibly a few years back, but yeah, it's one that doesn't pop up on the track roster all that often. So it's quite cool to have it here in Project Cars.
Indeed, yeah. I've not seen it in another game, and not even in real life in any racing series. So definitely a unique track in that sense to have here, and these guys trying to give us some battles around Zhuhai as well, as it looked like Ratchog was thinking about it. Oh, and he's put Jeff off a little bit though, as he gone deep in turn 1. Now he's thinking about it. He's going to be side by side through turn 2 into 3 and 4, and Jeff though getting the better traction out of the corner and top speed of that SLS helping out as well. And Ratchog still has to find another way, although he's looking very, very close. He's going to now go through the kink of turn 6 down into the heavy braking zone for one of the hairpins here, turn 7. But Jeff actually, yeah, he's going defensive actively this time around. Ratchog trying to cut back on the apex on the exit, but Jeff's car is in the way, and there we go. Jeff has managed to defend this particular attack from the Audi driver.
Yep, I just seen today in the comments saying that R Factor 2 has Zhuhai, but it's mod, it's not official content.
Well, R Factor does every track because people just make them themselves.
Yeah, obviously the modding community very quick to jump on their own personal favourite circuits and tend to model those. So it's pretty quick for them, and also Assetto Corsa to build up an unofficial list of tracks. But we've got it here official in Project Cars. So that is very nice, but yeah, Rattrug looking very, very racy. I'm wondering if he's trying to bide his time a little bit with Jeff. He doesn't seem too desperate to try and pressure him all that much. He's had a slight look here and there, but apart from Jeff making the mistake and kind of half presenting Rattrug with an opportunity, Rattrug hasn't really taken any chances. Again, Jeff running a little bit deep there coming through the first turn, or initially going into it through the apex. He looked relatively slow, but he tends to get the car straighter than Rattrug does, and kind of points and squirts and accelerates away. Obviously, the SLS, being a very, very heavy, torquey car, can do that. So Jeff with some relatively intelligent driving at the moment to try and hold off Ratrug.
Yeah. So Jeff doing a good job and not making it easy for Ratrug in the slightest. Hideaki actually pointing out in the chat that these guys are all on rain tires, not intermediates.
Yep, just seen that as well.
Which is interesting. So obviously light rain conditions, but for whatever reason the intermediates aren't being used, which is also a little bit surprising. And we are now just over the halfway point in the race. It's still dripping with rain ever so slightly, so but definitely, well, not definitely, probably maybe a little bit less than it was at the start of the race, but definitely not time for any sort of switch over to dry tires at this point in time. Let's see. Sula as well, now in the Twitch chat. Obviously, we saw him in the pits earlier on. He's now 12 laps down on the field. So he also says he had an unlucky race. He was pushed off tracks. Oh yeah, of course, yeah. That's what we saw at the first lap when. Who was it that pushed him again? Can't remember.
Sorry, I was busy reading the chat.
Yeah, I was trying to think of who nudged Sula over the corner on the first lap, but I couldn't quite remember.
I think it was contact between Sula and Hideaki.
Potentially, I'm not sure. In any case, someone pushed him over the track, and yeah, that's obviously part of the reason he's out. So, one thing I actually noticed in the last, well, as I say that, well, I had noticed that Claessens had been catching up to Keller, but now in the last lap.
Ratrug's making the move. He's on the inside of Jeff coming through turns 9 and 10. It was a little bit of a dive bomb, I think, initially. I don't think Ratrug quite intended to go for that move, but ended up basically coming down the inside of Jeff. Jeff had to give him room. He did so fairly. Yeah, Ratrug managed to get the car slowed down with Jeff on the outside, and then managed to complete the move going through turn 10. And it's now actually pulled out a couple of car lengths over Jeff pretty much immediately. So I think Ratrug, obviously with a slightly opportunistic move, has now actually decided that now is the time to push and make the overtake. And now he's off on his way and seeing if he can extend the gap. And his next driver is Brandrus, who's quite far up ahead. I'm actually seeing Biltis just in front of Brandrus and behind Claessens. He would have obviously made a stop, possibly switching over onto drier tyres as he's just gone deep there into turn 4. He's got a slow down penalty and gets nicely out of the way of Brandrus, so he's not going to hold him up. Actually, he doesn't get the slow down penalty. It looks like he's accelerated away relatively normally but steadily if he is on slick tyres.
Speaking of slick tyres, Atharion now going into the pits. So, I mean, I can't see any other reason for them to pit than changing onto slicks, but you can visually see that it's definitely still raining here. It's definitely still lots of water on the track surface. Unfortunately, there aren't really any way for us to tell what tires they're on, I don't believe, from the spectator box.
There is not, no.
So we can only speculate on that one, but Atharion coming out of the pits.
Gronstra, what are you doing?
Gronstra is doing what?
He's driving. Okay, that's
driving.
He
what are you doing? He's driving!
he parked on the racing line on the inside, apex of turn 7. Like I was just watching him on board, and he was slowing down, and all of a sudden he just stopped and didn't move for about a second or so.
Oh.
And I'm getting quite severe lag with Gronstra, but I think everybody else is okay. So hopefully, Fizzy, you are still there, and I am still connected to the server.
I mean, Gronstra seems fine for me, so hopefully that will sort itself out. But yeah, so Gronstra having an unknown issue then, and Mr. Elcon now kind of left lonely in 9th position. Atharion was close to him, I think, but obviously with him now having pitted and rejoining the track in 12th position, with actually a humongous gap either side of him, because the car behind him is Godfather of Shift, I believe, who is a lap ahead. So Yeah, Athario now still running in a decent point position, and obviously he was in the top 10, so if the cars that were around him also end up going to the pit lane, then he might get that back. But for the time being, let's see how he navigates this next corner on what could be dry tires on a still seemingly wet track. Yeah, he seems to be driving along pretty nicely. I don't know if it was actually a change on those dry tires, or if he for some reason felt like he needed a new fresher set of wets. But I'm not sure the wets really wear that much.
I am not sure either. One of the other McLarens, I believe it's Rillo, has made his pit stop as well and come out. So it's quite difficult to tell as the it still looks like it's raining and the track still seems wet. And ooh, what's that? What
Rillo just went straight on a turn 4.
Ratrug's in the pit lane.
Ratrug in the pit, okay.
Yep.
It looks like drivers are starting to make their stops. But yeah, for me, the weather visually, it really hasn't changed much at all. It still looks way too wet for drives for me. Don't know about you, Erky.
Yeah, it still looks too wet for drives for me as well. Obviously, the drivers, they'll know. Obviously, they're
they'll
driving
feel
around the circuit, they'll be able to feel it. But visually to us, actually, Ratrug's now gone a lap down to Chaff. Just seen him go past in turn 1. Just currently on board with Ratrug at the moment to try and see how his car is behaving and work out what kind of tyres he has actually gone onto.
Let's have a look at lap times. Chaff's times are improving. His best lap is 32.4 now. And on the previous one he did 32.6, obviously with the track drying up, even though this man is still on the wet tires that he started the race on. Times are improved because the track is getting drier. F-Mate now in the 33.2s on his best lap, and still running solidly in second place. Godfather of Shift also still out, but he has dropped another few seconds, as I'm actually seeing Brandress gain a position up to 5th place, which would be because Claessens is now in the pit lane from P5.
Jeff is also in the pits.
There we go. So parking in the box, obviously the pit stops in these cars take quite a while, with having to change the tires. No fuel being added, I don't think, you know, at least from when I was driving. The usual strategy was to just start with the race with as much fuel as you need, because, you know, even though you have a heavier car than in the race, you still gain more by doing that than if you were to add fuel on the pit stop. So it's purely a driver change in these cars. And Jeff rejoins the track in P9 then. He had Ratrug. Yeah, so Ratrug, these were obviously close together, and I think Ratrug with the undercut, with the one lap on the fresher tires, has managed to extend the gap to him there.
Yep, I'm just trying to get a look at Claessens' rear tyres. He is on wet.
It's on wet, okay.
Yep, so people have been pitting for wets. Obviously, Brandress, Deke, Godfather, Shift, Mate have not made it to the pits yet. Let's take a look at Ratrug. He is on wet tyres too. And I'm guessing Jeff is on wet tyres.
And maybe everyone is actually changed on the wets, whoever we have seen in the pit so far. So maybe the tires are actually, you know, wearing off quite a bit. And could that be as well because, you know, it's only light rain, and the wet tires are more suited to heavy rain, which means that they, you know, get a bit hotter than they normally would in these conditions.
Quite possibly. The only other thing I can think of is, as Jeff goes pretty deep there, coming into turn 11, manages to keep it on the track. Yeah, the only other thing I can think of is someone's got the weather settings wrong, and it's just going to be a wet race. It's not going to dry up, so we're only going to need to fire a weatherman if that is the case. Yep. But yeah, the tyres do wear out relatively quickly, I'd say, the wets. Jeff going pretty deep again, coming through turn 1. and then straightens himself up a little bit more coming out through the exit. But yeah, I think drivers are going onto wet tyres instead of slicks.
That would make sense visually with what we're seeing on the screen, because yeah, there's definitely still raindrops falling, and still some dampness on the circuit. You know, it's not too much. You don't see much spray actually at the moment coming up from the cars, but so I feel like, I mean, we saw much more spray at the start of the race, didn't we? I feel like
I've got my particles turned off, so I've seen no spray
right.
at all this race.
Oh, anyway, I thought I saw some spray at the start, but I'm barely seeing any spray of these guys at the moment. So,
yeah, the
you know, there are many theories. Maybe the you know, the settings are wrong. Maybe it is actually drying up a little bit, but just way slower than you would have thought. But in any case, still a wet out on track, so that's what the drivers will have to cope with at the moment. Looking on the timing, and oh, is that a battle, or is that just someone pitting again? Oh no, it is a battle. It's a battle for 7th place. Ratrug on the fresher tires, catching up to Mr. Alcon now. Coming into turn 1, he's going to go for the inside line. Mr. Alcon leaving him enough space there. Whew, I just about caught that one in time. Ratrug making up the position up to 7th place. Obviously, Mr. Alcon has not been in the pits yet, so he will be on a much more worn tires. The tires he started the race on. So it was pretty easy, seemingly move for Ratrug there in the Audi, who then runs a little bit off the apex on the turn 4. But yeah, so we have seen an overtake. So we are officially better than the Russian Grand Prix in terms of overtake count here. We did see quite a few in the start of the race as well, but yeah, that's good.
That's very useful to know, because I actually missed the Russian Grand Prix. I've watched like the first 5 laps, and I know that the ending was relatively interesting, but I don't know. I heard that the middle was relatively boring. But yeah, if we've had more overtakes in this race than the Russian Grand Prix, then I will not bother watching it.
Well, I'll give you this: the Russian Grand Prix. You want to guess how many overtakes happened in the Russian Grand Prix after lap 1?
Can I count them all on a single? Not a single hand, but can I count them on 2 hands?
Not sure you can count them all. It's all, to be honest.
Oh, is there not many?
Not quite.
Tell me. Do you have an exact number?
The exact number of on-track overtakes in the Russian Grand Prix was 0.
Wow. Wow.
So, yeah,
wow. Okay. Oh.
After the first lap, obviously.
Yeah. That's really, really disappointing.
That is, yeah. That is.
F1 has gone downhill, which is why I like WEC so much more, because they had. I think it was like 100 to 200 actual passes for position in the 6 hours of Silverstone. But guess how many times a car overtook another car in the WC 6 hours of Silverstone? That is including being lapped, being unlapped and stuff like that.
Yeah. Obviously that was not included in the Russian Grand Prix, but I'm gonna guess about wow, God, 300?
Higher.
Higher, wow. 500?
Higher.
Holy moly. 750.
Higher.
Are you serious?
Yes, I'm very serious.
1,500.
Higher.
Are you mad?
No, I'm not mad.
5,000. Come on now.
Oh, it was lower than 5,000.
Okay,
I think it was 4,000 and something.
Oh my word.
Across those 6 hours.
I mean, I managed to guess 2.5 billion, and that's probably closer than I started off at.
20.5 billion, actually.
20, yeah, well, you know.
Whilst we've been talking about the WEC, Ratrug's just ran wide twice on this lap in the breaker zones of turn 11 and on the exit of turn 14. He is still going though. He hasn't spun the car.
And he's still pulling away from Mr. Alcon despite that.
Yep. Well, obviously the fresher tyres.
Yeah.
Working in his favour. A lot of the guys have turned off their windscreen wipers, but the track still looks relatively damp, and I'm seeing in a couple of places that the rain is still falling. But Claessen's has now been lapped by Mr. Chuff, who is well in the lead Pretty clear of F-Mate, who is pretty clear of Brandress, who is pretty clear of Godfather of Shift. I think Godfather of Shift may have made a pit stop somewhere along the line.
Oh!
Anybody mentioned that in the chat?
Brandress, yeah, so Brandress up to 3rd place! Not having pitted yet, none of the top 3 have pitted. Godfather of Shift was running in 3rd, he has now been in the pits then. And he is about the length of the main straight behind Brandress. And will definitely be going faster. He's got 12 laps to catch him as Brandress also ran wide on the exit of turn 1 there as well. So it's going to be hard, I think, despite that, for Brandress to hold on to this podium with, you know, those tires he's on. But yeah, interesting, differing strategies there. Some drivers choosing to make the pit stop, other drivers choosing to try and stretch their stint all the way to the end. And Godfather Shift, interestingly, on the previous lap, actually wasn't faster than Brandress. They were pretty much equal.
Yes. On the previous lap, obviously a drying track, changing conditions, but yeah, I wonder what's happened there, because I don't see any visual damage to Godfather Shift's car. I could only... there's Brandress there. There's F-Mate. Going through turn 1 and 2. So, yeah, I think Godfather Shift has made a pit stop somewhere along the line.
He must have,
That's
yeah.
about the only thing I can explain for why he's dropped as far back as he has.
Yeah, so good, oh yeah, potentially good news for Brandress, whose best finish of the season so far is 7th. That was in the season opener at Monza. After that, he's at 9th, 11th, and 9th, and now he finds himself driving along in a podium position here with only 11 laps to go in the race. So Brandress could be on course for his best finish in the league. I'm not sure if he's had a podium in previous seasons. I can't quite remember on that one. But for all we know, you know, maybe he hasn't. So if anyone has a stat on that, then do let me know. But let's see then on the previous lap. And yeah, on the previous lap, wow, Godfather Shift lost time to Brandress on the fresher tires. So maybe, I wonder, maybe it's gone on the wrong set. Maybe it's on dries when he wanted to be on inters or wets or something like
that. Let's have a gander, see if we can see what he is on. They look like dry tires to me.
Interesting. So yeah, I'm gonna go with that theory then. That Godfather Shift has decided to go on the dry tires, but by the looks of it, the track, as we thought, isn't quite ready for it. Although I'm not actually seeing raindrops anymore coming down. Yeah, and the track is visually looking better now.
Yeah, it is starting to dry.
Oh, there's a few raindrops there, but yeah.
A little bit more. Yeah, it seems to be relatively local, the rain now. But I think we'll see on this lap. I think Godfather Shift may be closing slightly. Brandress did a 133.6 on the previous lap. Godfather Shift did a 131.9.
Here we go. Here we go. Now the dry tires are kicking in.
Yep. So obviously he's managed to get those up into temperature and up to pressure, and he's now feeling a little bit more comfortable. Obviously, if the track's drying a little bit more, you'll be able to push that a little bit harder. But Deke Keller as well, isn't actually too far behind, and he is on wet tyres, I believe, still.
Yeah.
Just trying to see, but the sun is working against me at the moment. I'll be able to find out for you after they come out of the hairpin of turn 7.
I would find out for you after the break. I will just scroll down the field then, to try and see what's going on. Claessen's about to... actually, Claessen just got lapped by the leader. Claessen in 6th place, been lapped by Chaff. That just shows how fast Chaff has been here today. Chaff, of course, not having pitted yet either. So Ratrug then in the 7th position. Oh, and Jeff has crashed! Jeff has crashed! And Mr. Alcon has been in the pits as well, but Jeff is in the wall. Without and he has got major... Oh, yeah, he's lost his tire. He's out of the race. Wow, he's completely out of the race. He's lost his right front tire there as Jeff. He's completely lost it. Where is that? Is that the exit of 5?
Turn 2?
Oh, turn 2. Is that turn 2? Oh, yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
it's the exit of turn 2, so he's probably just caught the curb rather awkwardly and then been spun off
Still
into
trying
the
to go
barrier on
without
the
his
right.
tire.
Oh, he's not going to get very far there. I think this is going to be him retiring.
That's a shame. Yeah, Jeff is out of the race. That's a shame. He was having such a good battle with Ratrog earlier on. Was only in the top 10, but it's gone wrong then, unfortunately, for Jeff. So, of course, everyone behind him will be happy about that. Getting a position. Built this up to 12. Mr. Alcon back up to 11th. He was running in 7th.
A point in this race. Sorry.
Yes.
Yep, I'm in P16, you're in P15.
Yeah. Oh wow, I'm getting 2 points. I'm amazing. Wow. Well, actually, for me, it says you're in 15th. I'm not sure what to believe now. But yeah, that's good. Rilo now then into the top 10 because of Jeff's problem. And Atharion in 9th on for his best result of the season. Gronstra, who we haven't seen much of after his early struggles in the race. He's now at least still going up into 8th position. Vatreg now quite lonely in 7th. Claessen's in 6th. And he's done a decent lap time there. Keller's done a 31.0. I don't know, did you see if Keller was on dries?
I couldn't quite tell.
Yeah.
The back of the roof makes it pretty difficult because there's not much light shining onto the rear tyres.
But he might well be, because Keller actually now has the fastest lap of the race with a 30.9.
I think he is. It looks like he is.
So I think Keller has pitted for dry tires, has kept his position in the top 5, and Godfather or Shift, also on the dries, has gained another 1 second on a Brandress on that particular lap, and he can now see him on the straight ahead of him. So I think this is what really we need to look out for now in the next 7 laps, is whether Godfather or Shift is able to, on his dry tires, close the gap back up to Brandress, who is still on the wet that he started the race on. And you can see the gap between them. Brandress now going through the hairpin. Godfather Shift now going through the hairpin. It's not a lot of seconds. And Brandress will definitely be feeling the pressure if he wants to get what is, I think, his first ever podium in this league.
Yep. So that'll be an interesting watch. We're actually just checking the pace between the drivers at the moment. Their first sector times are relatively similar. It's in the second sector that Godfather Shift is gaining a little bit more time. And I imagine possibly a little bit more through the final sector as well, but we can't check that in Project Cars 1, unfortunately. But it does look like that Godfather Shift is visually closing the gap up a little bit more. As Brandress is nice and tidy through that final turn. As is Godfather Shift using a little bit more track, but I think he just about managed to keep the 2 wheels within those white lines. He is obviously pushing hard and has actually done a 1:30.9, the fastest lap of the race so far. Actually scratched that. D. Keller behind him has gone 0.3 of a second quicker to do a 1:30.6. So the 2 men on the move at the moment in these final stages is D. Keller, Godfather Shift, both on their dry tyres, hunting down Brandress for that final podium position. I think Fizzy, that F-Mate and Chaff are too far ahead to basically catch up with unless they have a major mistake somewhere along the line.
Yeah, I think you're right. And DeCal was actually a lot closer to Godfather Shift than I thought he was. Yeah, so the gap from Brandress to Godfather Shift is about the same as from Godfather Shift to Keller now. As I'm just watching Charf navigate the circuits, he's still on the tires he started the race on, I believe, and is about to catch up to Claessen's again. Wait, I thought he already went past Claessen's. So for whatever reason, Claessen's now back ahead. So maybe Claessen's is on dry tires actually, and has got some pace back on Charf because Charf is still in the wet.
Claessen's there he is. He is on wet tires.
Wet tires, wow. In that case, I
think
don't
he's
know.
On fresh. I think he's on fresh wet tires though.
Okay, yeah.
So he will have more grip, but Godfather of Shift
Here we go,
very, very close to the back of Brandress now.
Oh, I can't see how Brandress on the wet tires still are going to be able to make this defense for another 6 lap, because look at this, Godfather just already on the inside heading down towards turn 1 to claim that podium position back there. Aston Martin though with a bit better straight line speed, so Godfather Shift really has to do it on the brakes here, and Brandress forced to go wide around turn 1 and 2, and there we go. Godfather Shift should have him in the traction zone, back up to third position where he was before. He made it interesting for himself, of course, with that pit stop and with Brandreth staying out. But now, Godfather Shift should have the pace to pull away. But of course, one uncertainty though for him is the Keller right behind, who is also on those dry tires and has shown slightly faster pace than him in the last few laps. As you mentioned. Yeah, again a new fastest lap of the race, 0.5 for him, 0.4 of a second faster. Actually, on the previous lap, it was 0.6 of a second faster than Godfather Shift. So if Keller is able to clear Brandreth efficiently and quickly here, he could have a chance at challenging Godfather Shift for that podium position.
Yep, definitely. He was very, very close to Brandreth, and I think scared him off the apex a little bit and scared him out the exit of that corner there as well. Brandreth running out onto the grass and over the curb. That would have hurt his traction as he was on the run down towards the hairpin of turn 11. D. Keller going around the outside, giving Brandreth the room on the inside. Makes the move up into fourth position, demoting Brandreth down into fifth place. Unfortunately, robbing him of any chance of getting a podium unless D. Keller and Godfather of Shift managed to close up towards each other and have an almighty battle and unfortunately take each other out. Hopefully we won't see that. But D. Keller pushing hard and despite actually making that move on Godfather of Shift on that lap was actually quicker than Godfather of Shift by 1 second. So he's continuing to push and try and close that gap down. I think D. Keller is sensing that he is in a very good chance of trying to get the podium here and wants to try and take that off of Godfather of Shift before the end of this race.
Yeah, we have seen Keller fight for podiums on multiple occasions in previous seasons, but I was about to say actually that this would be Keller's first podium of this season if he got it, but of course because of the DSQ situation at Catalunya he did actually officially get a podium there, but he did cross the line only in fifth, so in terms of, you know, position immediately after the race, this would be his first podium. And look how much he's closing up on the Godfather Shift, and the braking there went a little bit deep though, so it's not going to help him coming out of the corner. But yeah, this is going to be an all-out battle between the BMW Z4 of Godfather Shift and the roof of D. Keller here in the final 4 or 3.5 laps, or actually 4 laps, because I think Chaff might actually have started this final one. And yes, he has. He's way out in front. So yeah, 4 laps to go for these guys to fight it out for the podium.
Yep, definitely. They're coming into that final turn now to begin lap 42. And D. Keller looking closer than ever to Godfather of Shift. And didn't quite set the fastest lap on that race, but he's having a look down the inside of the braking zone. Coming into turn 1, contact with 22. They've both just taken each other out onto the gravel. I thought that was going to be a little bit optimistic by D. Keller there to come.
There goes Brandreth!
Oh, very close to making contact with D. Keller there. Brandreth slotting it back up into 4th position. I think I may have just commentated and cursed these two drivers because I said that isn't going to be with a chance of getting the podium unless these two guys close with each other and have an almighty coming together. That has just happened. Brandreth is only a few car lengths back from Godfather Shift, but it's obviously on the wet tyres. D. Keller looking to try and make the positions back up again. Goes down the inside of Brandreth in turn 7, the hairpin there, and manages to make the move stick relatively cleanly that time. But yeah, D. Keller obviously wanting to try and get the position done and dusted and up onto the podium much sooner as Brandreth gets very, very close to the back of D. Keller there in the braking zone. Yeah, obviously wanting to try and get that podium position and try and run away from Godfather of Shift and try and minimise Godfather of Shift's chance of taking the podium in these dying stages of this race. Yeah, try to make a little bit of a risky move down the inside into turn 1. I thought it was going to be a little bit brave coming from that far back and trying to outbrake the Z4 into that turn, but yeah, it didn't quite work out, and it led to both of the two drivers going off into the gravel on the exit of turn 1.
Yeah, I think Keller, well, unless it was just a case that he, well, I think he definitely tried to make the move because he was looking to the inside going down into the corner for quite a while into the braking zone. But yeah, I think it was just being a little bit too impatient there, to be honest, because it was always going to be tricky from the distance he was to make that move. And he, given his pace in recent lap, he definitely will get another chance. Obviously now he still has the opportunity because they managed to not lose too much time, and Godfather, oh, that's going to end the battle.
That's a slow down. Yeah,
slow down
penalty.
And here comes Brandreth again.
Take back that 4th position. He's got it, but I think it's only going to be a matter of time before Godfather Shift manages to close that gap back up and retake that 4th place. But that's very unfortunate for Godfather Shift. Obviously, feeling the pressure of D-Color from behind, ran a little bit too deep in through turn 4 and onto the grasscrete that's on the right-hand side of turn 5. And yeah, unfortunately got hit with the track limit slowdown penalty, which has robbed him of that podium place.
Oh! What a save though from Brandrus. Almost got
Yeah.
spun off that curb, but that is going to lose him the position. That could have been bad for him if he had not managed to save that. He would have been straight in the wall. That's the corner, of course. Suomi was sitting at the side of the track earlier in the race after presumably losing it in a similar fashion that Brandrus nearly did there. But Brandrus managing to save it to keep 5th place at least for him in this race, which would still be his best finish of the season, despite not quite being the podium that he for a while looked like he maybe could get. So yeah, this of course means D-Keller now because of Godfather Shift's mistake. Oh, actually, I'm seeing a battle. That would be, yeah, Rillo and Mr. Alcon having a battle for 10th position, just ahead of Godfather Shift actually. They're a lap down. Sorry, yeah, D-Keller, yeah. So they're a lap down on those, but still having a battle. And I think this is the closest battle on the circuit right now. So I'm gonna stay on this for a bit.
Yep, I shall watch with you, and we can commentate on this together, Fizzy.
Yes.
So,
Oh, and actually,
down towards turn 9.
I might not stay on this because I've just realized C Charf is on the final lap of the race for him.
Yes, he is.
So I'm gonna see.
Turn 7 now, and into an almost non-existent, sorry, turn 8. It's that little kink there that he's literally just gone through.
Yeah. So we have a little bit of time to watch Rillo and Mr. Alcon. Oh, and Rillo, not ideal for him to let Keller through in the middle of the hairpin, and that has given Mr. Alcon a chance maybe to get a run, but Rillo getting better traction out of the corner because of the wider entry. But yeah, that was nearly bad for Rillo there, nearly losing the top 10 position as a result of Keller kind of coming up to lap him at a pretty unfortunate time. So they're going to start their final lap of the race side by side across the line. I think Charf is about to cross the line back there, but these guys are side by side for 10th position. I'm going to watch them going down into turn 1. Mr. Alcon on the inside on the brakes. Mr. Rillo trying to cut underneath, but it's a long exit of that corner, and Mr. Alcon has got that one covered for the time being. We will get back to that, unless Rillo's going to move to the inside. Ooh, Mr. Alcon's got it covered, but Mr. Alcon is wide. Oh, and Mr. Rillo's lost it. Oh, I thought Rillo had it, but then he's completely lost it there. So, that's the end of that battle. He might drop even further positions now. He's down to 12. But Charf has crossed the line. He's now going to come across the area where Rillo is currently joining the track, and his AI has to avoid him. So Charf has won the race here, all the way from the pole to flat. Never really challenged. And behind him will be F-Mate. A very solid 2nd place for him. That would be F-Mate's... yeah, first podium of the season. His best previously was P6, so he now comes across the line to take 2nd. And then, of course, we will have D-Keller, who we saw in the closing stages here, get on to 3rd. But let's see where Rillo ended up. So he's actually dropped. Oh my word! And he's battling Charles' AI. He was on the parade lap at the moment. But Rillo's still going. So. He says he's 13th, but I believe he's actually 12th.
Yes, Biltis managed to take the position from him as he was recovering from his spin.
Yep. So, next across the line would be Godfather Shift, and then we will have a Barandras now across the line to get a 5th place position. And actually, after that, everyone was lapped. So, Claessens gets P6. But he's a lap down. Ratrug in the Audi gets 7th. Gronstra, solid 2nd half of the race for him, despite seeing a lot of him in the first part. He gets 8th in the end. Tharion in a solid 9th position in that Bentley. That is his actually 2nd top 10 of the season. And Mr. Alcon also in the top 10. Biltis, Rillo, Jamai. The final finishers, as Jeff also was another man we saw crash out of the race, and of course earlier on we did lose Sula, Suomi, and also Hideaki.
Aye. That was interesting. I was kind of hoping that the drive over will come a little bit sooner rather than the final 10 laps, but it certainly made the
Yeah,
final 10 laps pretty interesting.
it really did, yeah.
The position.
The dry tire runners versus the wet tire runners, especially with, of course, Brandress. He tried, and to be honest, it was a good attempt from Brandress to try and stay out there. He wouldn't have had any other chance on that of getting the podium. And you know, it nearly worked. If if the dry weather had come just a little bit later, maybe he could have pulled that one off. But in the end, 5th place for him. So it wasn't the most classic race, I would say, but we did see a bit of battling. Certainly way better than the Russian Grand Prix. And yeah, we still have 4 races to go in the season. More excitement to come, I'm sure. We got Nürburgring next time out. We got Silverstone still to go to in the night time. We got Watkins Glen also in mixed conditions for the penultimate round, and Dubai to round off the season, as we are now being kicked out of the lobby. So Yorkie, I think it's time for some interviews.
Aye. And who are we going to speak to?
It's always the most difficult question of the night, isn't it? Do let us know in the chat, guys, if you have any particular wishes for who we should interview at the moment.
I'm going to put forward 3 names.
Okay.
I'm going to say Godfather of Shift, D. Keller, and Brandress, and get their own little stories of those final 10 laps, because that was probably the most interesting part of the race. Certainly for me, anyway, the excitement.
That would be fine if it wasn't for the fact that Godfather of Shift is not in the Discord channel.
Okay. Well, Nismo is also asking for Brandress.
Okay, yeah. So I guess we could still get Brandress and Keller, and then do let us know in the chat, guys, if you want a 3rd one, and if so, who it should be. But yeah, I will get. Let's start with Brandress then, who was nearly on the podium. Hello, Mr. Brandress.
Hello.
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 So, you had an interesting race. I can't quite remember where you started on the grid. Do remind us.
10th, and Perry was in the rear, starting in the rear or something like that, or behind us. So I actually started 9th.
Okay. So,
Okay.
go on, Yorkie. You can take this one.
Yeah, so you got P10 up into P5. You were so very, very close with the podium at the end there. Obviously, you're going for the strategy of trying to hold on to the wet tyres rather than pitting for the dry tyres. Roughly what sort of time in the race were the track conditions actually drying up? Because visually for us, it looked like it was still raining until probably the last 15 to 10 laps, when we thought it was going to switch about halfway through the race.
Indeed, but I must say I only started this game at 8 o'clock Dutch time. I haven't driven for 2 weeks now. But the thing was, I was also expecting to have a half distance pit stop. I also set a pit stop strategy to that. But it kept raining and raining and raining, and indeed the last 15 laps, so not the halfway mark, it started drying up. But I saw the times, first E-Classens and then Godfather of Shift, and I kept the same distance until the last 8 laps, and then they started getting faster than me.
Yeah, I think they hopped onto the dry tires in their pit stop. So as the track was drying up, obviously they had the advantage. But you put in a very valiant attempt, and you almost came
third.
Well, yeah, you almost came third. Obviously, you unfortunately got passed by the 2 drivers, but they're coming together, and you snuck back up into 4th. But yeah, unfortunately, you weren't quite able to hold on. Did you feel you could have possibly, if you had a little bit more practice time, maybe have got a podium in that race if things panned out in pretty much the same manner?
I really don't know, because when I was driving, I really thought that perhaps Hideaki didn't set the second weather slot, so I thought, okay, just
Yeah.
move on. And I was laughing my ass off because everybody was spinning. So from why? And what is going on? And I only did my laps constantly 133s, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So very consistent lap times, and that's at the end. When Godfather of Shift was closing the gap, I really thought I can't lose this. Let me say, I can't win it from the track conditions and his dry tires. So my race eventually actually was with E. Claessens, and it worked. I got that place.
It did actually work out for it in the end. So yeah, it was definitely a good strategy. I think, yeah, you weren't the only one who got caught off guard a little bit by how long it's kept waiting for, because we did speculate as well that maybe the settings weren't quite right, but eventually it did actually dry up, so I guess we were right, but the game decided to make it rain a little bit longer than than we thought.
Indeed, but I think Fernax was the other one that didn't pit, and how did Charles do it? He also didn't pit, or did he pit?
I think both of the top two didn't pit, actually.
Okay, yeah, but they are in roofs, so they are very fast on this track, and in those conditions.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Still though, you couldn't quite hold on to the podium, but you still got your best result of the season, so 5th place, not bad.
Yeah, it was a very big surprise.
Maybe you should not practice more often. But yeah, 4 races to go in the season. Any particular track you're looking forward to out of the ones we got? If you even remember the calendar.
I know we got Silverstone, and the only track that I really thought that I could do well at was the first one on Monza. And unfortunately, I had the first lap incidents. But Silverstone, Watson Glen, and Dubai, I really have no idea what to expect.
That's fair enough. Well, just go into the race and do whatever you can, I guess. That's usually what I tend to do. Anyway.
Indeed. Try to enjoy myself.
Yep. So, I think that's it. Thank you, man, for joining us in the box.
You're welcome. Bye, guys.
Alright, we'll catch you next week.
Congrats on 5th.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, bye.
Cool. Let's see who we got left. Keller is still in the Discord. So let's grab him and splat him into the commentary box. Hello, Mr. Papand, aka D. Keller.
Hello. I'm here again now.
Here again.
You're a very popular man in this commentary box.
Oh, that's nice.
We'd like to have you here. Yeah, we thought we'd talk to you about your race because you got a podium. And I was gonna say your first of the season, but that's not quite right, isn't it? Because of the altered results from Catalonia. But at least it's the first time.
Yeah, let's just say it's the first of the season. I prefer that.
Yeah, it probably feels like the first one you deserved of the season.
Yes.
So how was your race then? Where did you start? Actually, I can't quite remember.
I was 5th and lost the position right away to Godfather Shift. I couldn't hang on to I could hang on to the guys in front, but I was very insecure in the rain on this track. I haven't really got things to work in the rain, but I knew I was very, very fast in the dry. I knew that Shaft would run on the wets the whole race, and I'd done some testing, and I knew it could be faster, but I thought it was very hard to drive with that, so I decided to do the pit and go on the dry and try to use my strong side there. It is my favorite track, not in the wet, but in the dry.
All right.
So I tried to charge there, and I think it worked all right. I was a little bit too over aggressive on Godfather Shift the first time, but got it right the second time.
All right. How was the strategy for you actually? Because did you get surprised by how long it ended up raining for?
Yes, I really hoped it would be shorter. Shorter rain time, because of course I was faster on the dry, and I probably also pitted a lap too early, just when I came out on the dry, I was on the dry tires. I was really surprised how slippery it was.
Yeah.
So it took some time before I could really put in the lap times I wanted.
Exactly. I think Godfather Shift had a similar issue that he at the start of his dry tire run he wasn't quite been able to keep the pace that he needed to catch the car's head, but obviously eventually it did dry up and you both could get up to Brandress and get by him quite easily, but well, maybe not so easily because you then had a bit of an incident.
Yes, that was completely my fault, and I also said sorry to Godfather Shift for that one. But yeah, I was really feeling on fire there because I put the 10-second gap down to 0, and I was hoping that Vernox would be closer up ahead. So I had a hope that I could maybe catch second, but he was far away.
Yeah, and ultimately it didn't really affect things too much. I think you really had the pace to pass Godfather Shift anyway, and then of course he ended up making that mistake that made it a bit easier. So
yeah.
Oh well, still podium. You happy with that, I assume?
yeah, absolutely. And I also think that I put in the fastest lap of the race. That was the only thing.
Yeah, I believe so.
I needed to do in AOR. I haven't done yet, so
oh wow,
fastest
nice.
lap pole win. Now I just need an individual win, but in the overall of the season. But I'm not sure that's gonna happen.
Oh, you never know. Go on,
I don't have a individual championship. Of course.
There you go. That's what you need next.
Yes,
Last one.
That's the only thing missing. Yes.
Yep. Last one on the checklist.
Just catch half, no problem.
We're gonna hope for some better. He is my teammate, so maybe I could put in some gremlins in his setup, but I'm not sure.
You could always try. I think most drivers on the grid need you to do that really at the moment. But
yeah, in a league of his own, and I know he's practicing a ton of time, so it's really well deserved. I mean, he puts in the effort to get there, so just major respect for that.
Indeed. All right. I think that's enough for now. But thanks as always for joining us in the Condrags.
Yep. Thank you guys. Thank you
of course.
See you next time.
Condrags on the podium.
Thank you very much.
Right. Congrats. Bye.
Bye.
Cool. I think we will leave it at that because we talked to those two quite lengthily there, I think. And haven't seen any particular requests in the chat. And also today is asking us to hurry up because he wants to play something with you or something. So
he wants to play Battlegrounds.
Yeah, sure. Sounds like a plan. And yeah, I was gonna actually, before we go, Mini Manor, I saw that he put the hopefully correct provisional championship standings, pending any post-race penalties. I hope that we won't get that again because I don't like to see it, but of course depends on whether drivers have been nice and clean today. But Minimanor has put that the driver championship of this race will be C-Charf ahead, way out in front on 207 points. Godfather Shift up to second place because Nova not being here, of course. He's on 147 with Nova on 137, so 10 points of a gap there. And then D. Keller now moving up to 4th position, ahead of Hideaki, who again, had an unfortunate issue, and also ahead of Jeff actually, who crashed out of the race. So Keller getting 2 spots in the championship with that 3rd position. After that, I'm not quite sure. So we'll update you on that ahead of the next race, which will be at the Nürburgring in some light cloud. Nothing too special about the weather in that particular occasion. Quite early in the morning, but I think it should be nice and sunny there. So Nürburgring GP, it's an interesting circuit. Can't remember the last time we were there, so hopefully it should be a good race. Yorkie, anything to say about that?
No, not really, other than the Nürburgring. Everybody knows the Nürburgring is in a week's time. We've got 40 racing laps, obviously 41 with the formation laps, so it'll be a relatively lengthy one, and I imagine it'll probably be a one stop for majority, if not everybody.
Yeah, we will see.
Yep.
So Nürburgring GP next week, Wednesday, around 7:50 p.m. UK time-ish, depending on when we can be bothered starting the stream. And
time.
hopefully in time. Oh, don't say that. But yeah, thank you guys who have been watching the stream today. See, F-Mate now has made his way into the chat as well. Obviously today has been here. Nismo's been here, not been able to race. Obviously Miniman, Hideaki after he crashed out, well, or had his issue. And everyone else who have been with us. Thank you very much. We do appreciate the support in the chat and everywhere else. And hopefully you'll join us again next week for the Nürburgring GP circuit. So, that's it. The championship rages on 4 rounds to go. We'll catch you next week. Goodbye.
Cheers, goodbye.
Living.